It was a very interesting program yesterday. I think one of the things that stood out for me, at least, was looking at all those young people with questions about their country and looking at the hope in their eyes and hoping that someone looks at that and plans for them. The idea of our young people in this country not being privy to a government that works or having to enjoy anything from government sends shivers down my spine, because it makes me wonder what sort of adults we're going to have. Look at them asking pure questions. Oh, look at the young man that had the farm. You know, they still have the hope that their country will work. And we're hoping that the government of the country that they're in will take that into cognizance and ensure that their futures are secure. Joining us for the conversation about some of what happened yesterday and the state of our nation, as well as the second year of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in office, we have Mr. Laolu Akande, former presidential aide and host of Inside Sources. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Good to see you again, Kayla.
You saw those young people yesterday.
Yeah.
What came to your mind when you saw ideas? They had plans. Oh, I want to do this. What they were asking the minister, Bosun Tijani, what can I do? What kind of advice would you give me as a person who wants to go into farming? Oh, I mean, I want to try some IT. What can I do? How do we ensure that it is a safe space? What were your thoughts when you were hearing those children talk yesterday?
Well, I mean, first to say how great and how fortunate and blessed Nigeria is with that demography, the fact that a significant portion, actually the largest portion of our population are young people, you know, with a lot of energy, youthfulness, innovation, ideas, you know, aspiration. That is a big deal. And I think, I mean, the more we are able to integrate them, the more we are able to support them, the more we are able to inspire them, the better for the country. I mean, so seeing some of them come out and the kind of engagement that you had with some of those ministers, quite encouraging. You know, there's still a lot more to be said and to be done, but I think it's a good thing that you're having this kind of a forum where you know, the exchange of ideas can take place.
I think kudos really to the ministers who showed up yesterday, Bosun Tijani, John Eno, the Minister of Interior, you know, and a few other government officials. Kudos to them for coming out.
True.
There are some ministers in this Tinubu's administration that should have come out. Yeah, because people have a lot of questions for them. The Minister of Power, for instance, I think should have been there. You know, because a lot of these young people, I'm not hearing young people talking about working for anybody. They all want to start businesses.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And that is something that we've been asking for, isn't it? We've been trying to grow our MSME space. We have awards coming up. We have all of these things. Nigeria is hosting the African MSME Awards this year.
And all that.
You know, so we're trying to open up that space. And these are the people who are going to come with stars in their eyes to open up that space. The Minister of Power should have been there, I think. You know, to explain how businesses will work, what are his plans for the sector, you know, and how these young people can benefit from his programs. I'm sure
that you know, he's not hiding. I imagine, you know, at some point, because power is very central, you know, to the whole idea of productivity, which is what I think all of this should be geared to. I mean, in the last 1 week on Inside Sources, we have been talking about some of the things that the administration can do as it marks second year, and the idea of energy is very central, because you cannot find any country in history that is able to speed up its development, you know, without an optimal use of energy. So energy and power is very central to some of the things that has to happen. So I imagine that the minister and the other ministers, they still have a time to show up. I mean, we just need to encourage them, you know, not to be afraid to come out and speak to the press.
It's just accountability.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because when we see you do your meetings, when we see you talk to the president, you always say, oh, we are doing this. Mr. President, we are working. Come and say it to the Nigerian people.
Yeah, I mean, which is one thing that we must say of Mr. Nyesom Wike, in spite of, you know,
no matter what you think
political drama that he puts up on the national stage, you must give Wike the credit that Wike gets out there and talks engages the media regularly, So it would be nice to see ministers such as Power also come out, and more of them, especially about this time, to try and talk to the Nigerian people as to what they are doing.
Speaking of the ministers in the Tinubu administration, he's been 2 years in office. A lot has happened to this cabinet of his. He's reshuffled it, he's moved it around, moved one person from here to here. How would you assess this cabinet? Should he reshuffle it again? Many people are saying there are some people that should go. There are some people that are not, giving us the bang for our buck. And maybe if he wants to really leave this legacy, because he comes off as someone who wants to leave a legacy of the presidents where this and this happened while I was in, which is a good thing.
Right.
But to get that job done, are these the men and women?
I think that that is an issue, and you have to let the president just do what he thinks is right. I believe that there are quite a number of, performing ministers in this administration, but there are also those who are, not really pulling their weight. I'm sure that the president will have, all the details. I mean, that there is this assessment and evaluation under Ajia Adiza, where Nigerians are even able to comment. And I'm sure that the president will have all those information. What I think that is more important that I would like to highlight is that there needs to be a more effective coordination of government business. Right now, you find that there are a lot of presidential directives, that is taking so long for them to be implemented. That has to be sorted out. Secondly, the government ought to pay attention on how to create real impact. Some of the achievements that they have recorded are underreported, and they are not able to show the people. Now, there's still a lot to be done. There's still a lot of challenges, but even some of the steps that they have advanced, you don't see the impact properly demonstrated, and that goes to the question of trust. If people can't see the result, if you cannot show the result in transparent form, then people will continue to question whether indeed you are doing anything. And, just like the Financial Times said, there's still a lot of pain in the land. There's still a lot of economic challenges. But Financial Times even agreed, and I think that is the right position, that the president should stick to some of those bold reforms. But there must be attention paid to the question of poverty alleviation. Before these things germinate and deliver the goods, what are we doing to the people that are on the lower rungs of the ladder? Very, very important thing.
And those economic policies of the president, really, one of the questions people have had is, articulate let's be clear on what we're doing. Although it's beginning to be clear that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu doesn't deal in absolutes. He tries this as much as we can, see what we can get from that, and then try this. It does feel that way when you look at his economic policies. Case in point, the free market conversation, So we're not really there where we're taking away all subsidies away from things. But to a large extent, a lot of the subsidies will be removed, which will definitely ripple down to what we're dealing with right now. And he's explained this is supposed to create a clearer picture of who we are, where we stand, and how we can actually build our economy. Makes sense. But, the communication of it and the to cushion the impact, something as hard as that would have on the Nigerian people is something that we're still struggling with. At least he's still struggling with in the minds of many.
And that is where I think the Minister for Poverty Alleviation, really needs to up his game, and also the coordinating Minister of the Economy, who is also playing a role in trying to release the funds. I think that the Tinubu administration may have been doing quite a bit in the area of social investment and poverty alleviation, but we haven't seen a lot of that out there, and so the impression is still maintained as if the government is not sensitive to the pains, and Mr. President must consider that as a very important thing to do. Keep showing us that you are concerned about the difficulties, not by only what you say, but show us what your government is doing. It doesn't matter if you can't reach 20 million people, because of the lean resources, but show us the 5 million, where are they? The 7 million, where are they? The 10 million, where are they? Show us, so that those who have not been reached, we have expectation and hope that if these people have been reached somewhere down the line soon, I will also be reached. It helps the government to build trust.
Before we move on, before I pass you on to Mal, I want you to be able to talk about anti-corruption under the Tinubu administration for the past 2 years. Subsidy has been removed.
Yeah.
The accountability of where the money has gone to is a question that many Nigerians have for Mr. President. We get it, but where's the money going? Where is it right now? What's it doing right now? Can we have more focus on what that money that has been removed is doing right now? And then when it comes to, repatriated funds, it's supposed to be put back in. Where has it gone? What is it doing?
Right.
That articulation, what can he do to magnify the articulation on what the monies that have been recovered and ways that he's cutting down the cost of governance? He keeps saying we're cutting it down. Where is the money going?
Yeah, I mean, so let's just take it from the last thing you said, the cutting down of government costs. We haven't seen, any kind of demonstration of that claim. And I'm not contesting it because I don't know. I remember, I think sometimes last year, the president came out and said, through the spokesperson and said that we're going to call this from the travel, we're going to call that, but we haven't been told that this is the amount of money that has been saved. So this government, the Tinubu presidency, still has a job to do to show us that we said this and we have done this. I mean, look at the issue of, the government agencies that have to be reduced, and realigned and put together, the numbers of MDAs, we haven't seen any kind of report. A committee was set up, sometimes last year or late 2023, that had, I believe, the Secretary of the Government of the Federation that would chair, how they were going to ensure that some of these agencies' numbers are reduced, are cut to size, so that there are no duplication. Nobody has told Nigerians up to today what is the outcome of that or whether, in fact, it has happened. And some of the things that we even hear is that there's a lot of distortion, a lot of dysfunction in the coordination of government business, to the point that there are claims that you have a situation where people whose agencies are supposed to be removed or sent out, you are appointing DGs there, you are appointing the managing directors, even though the government has said that we will be aligning one agency with another agency, but you are still appointing people to those agencies. So government has to do a better job in terms of being a little bit more accountable to the people. And to the question of corruption, the president, I was excited that during the APC summit, the president himself brought up the issue of indiscipline and corruption. That is one big deal, that has to be straightened out. If we don't deal with corruption in this country, if we don't deal with the problems of indiscipline, every other thing that we do is going to be corroded by the corrosion of corruption. So we got to deal with corruption. President Buharis is right. If we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us.
So let me quickly take you up on the issue of security, which is an area where a lot of Nigerians are still disillusioned. Farmers are still, complaining about access to their farms. People are still finding travel, journeying anxiety. These are some of the issues. I'm sure you've also been speaking with people in that field on inside sources. What are some of the things that you hear are really happening with regards to security, and what is it that Nigerians can hold and say, oh, it has improved or it hasn't improved?
Okay, thank you, Markwe, and it's good to see you back in Lagos. So I think the point about insecurity and security is that, yes, just like the NSA showed us during the National Summit, there has been quite a bit of increased activity, a rise in the effort and improvement in the effort of the government and the security agencies, the military, to deal with kidnapping, to deal with banditry, to deal with insurgency. But it's still falling short. It's still falling short. We are having a resurgence in Borno, okay? The killings in Benue and Plateau, there are no accountability, no justice, Nobody is telling us about those who have been arrested. So those are still sticking points. I mean, and those are very important, you know, worries that Nigerians continue to express. Okay, so some of the things that, you know, I have picked up, you know, with some of my guests on Inside Sources, you know, and by the way, you know, you have a lot of people, your guests say, well, look, we don't want to say this in the open, you know, this is the kind of stuff. Is that the time may be right, and I did say that in my take last week, the time may be right for the president to put back the issue of using unconventional methods to fight this problem of insecurity. We may need to do that at this point because, you know, it seems that the military is stretched. They're doing as much as they could. But when you have a situation where ISWAP and Boko Haram is now attacking, they've gotten the confidence back, and they are attacking the military bases, you know, and they are dislodging those bases, and they are cutting away their weapons. That is what is happening again in Borno. So while we continue to support the military, while we continue to ensure that they get the job done, Mr. President, please don't take away the option of using unconventional fighting means to deal with the situation. President Jonathan did it ahead of the elections in 2015, and those guys did a very good job. We need that stability, and we need to have that help for the military. The other thing about security is that we need to increase the numbers of the troops, be they military or police. It is quite something that I find very worrying that since 2015 that the APC has been in power, and now that's 10 years. The governments of President Buhari and President Tinubu, just 2 years in now, we've not been able to significantly increase the numbers. Why is that a problem? The president now, who is there, needs to look at that situation and do what has to be done. There must be a decisive move by the president to ramp up the numbers of the troops, be they military or police. You know, this problem is going on. Why aren't we having more soldiers recruited? Why aren't we having more police people recruited? And then let's continue to see how we can improve the conditions of this uniformed men.
You know, one of the things, we're talking about security, one of the things that you'll hear when you ask government officials, for instance, the Minister of Interior, he will say, well, we were where we were, you know, some years ago. He will say the answer is no. Are we where we want to be? The answer is no. But then the question is, how long do you think it will take for us? What do you really think it will take? I'm glad that you clarified the issue of what you mean by unconventional means. I imagine that you're referring to mercenaries, which were used sometime in 2014 to get rid of, to quell the Boko Haram crisis somewhat. You've clarified that. But what do you think it will take beyond this unconventional means for Nigeria? Do you ever think we'll get to a place where we'll be really settled in the area of security? Because a lot of Nigerians remember the time, yes, at different times of faced different types of challenges. Armed robbers were the rave one time, kidnapping was the rave another time. Now terrorism has been added to it, banditry, etc. Do you ever think that we'll get to a time where, you know, issues around security will be tame enough for Nigerians to be able to move freely without too much worry?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe and hope and pray that that day will come when, you know, those problems will be significantly dealt with. And we do have the ability to make it happen. We do have it. You know, I remember during the presidential campaign, then the presidential candidate did, you know, mention the fact of how this problem can be solved, especially on how the numbers will be ramped up. That is one thing that we can do that we haven't managed to do. And that's why we're saying that all it will take is for the president to become more decisive. Now, I do have an inside track that the president is really, really concerned about the security situation, and he really wants to get it sorted. You know, I think we have enough information about that. But what will be required is the president to take those tough decisions. the tough decisions to ensure, for instance, that whatever may be the obstacles in the way people the troops are hired, you know, is removed, and to take a hard look at the prevalence of the trouble spots in the country and compare it with the capacity of our security agencies and determine whether for a limited amount of time we need to use unconventional means to deal with the situation. Because what is important is the welfare and the security of the Nigerian people. Now, those are the areas that I think that the president needs to really sit down and just become more decisive. And we have seen that this president can take decisions, he can take bold decisions, he can take tough decisions. We are hoping and praying that on this issue of the security, the president will put his foot down and do what has to be done, which we have not managed to do over the years. The options are very clear.
Mr. Akande,
president.
Let me, well, I'm glad you've done with your thoughts there, but let me quickly chip in this. Whatever happened to the conversation around state police? 1 minute it seemed like we're all but set to go down that route, and all of a sudden it looks like the conversation is in abeyance. No one is talking about it anymore. Do you think that we need to put a little more fire at the feet of the governors to find out what exactly their position is with regards to state police?
Very good one, and I was personally disappointed that the last National Economic Council meeting, where the governors come and meet with the federal government, the issue of the state police was supposed to be discussed, but for some reasons they had to skip the agenda. I think that reflects poorly on the governors, that they were willing to postpone a conversation on the state police. They ought to be the ones that are saying, look, this is the most important issue in the land. So you are right. It seems that we are losing the steam regarding the state police. But we need to also urge the president, because the president could also be more bullish about this push for state police. You remember, when the president came up with those reform bills, the tax reform bills, and you had some pushback from the governors and, you know, a few other interests in this country, the president issued a statement and said that no, he is going forward with those reform bills. If anybody has anything to say, let them go and do it in the National Assembly. And the president persisted, and ultimately, those bills are on the way to his table to be signed. The president should adopt the same kind of attitude on the question of state police, or at least decentralization of the Nigerian police force. We want the president to be more, show more interest, push the issue. I mean, the buck stops at his desk. But also for the governors, you know, not to have a situation where you are willing to say, okay, let's postpone discussion on state police. We do need state police, or at least some kind of decentralization of the Nigerian police force. The level of insecurity in this country demands it, and time has come for us to do it.
In fairness, really, while we're talking, I was actually just taking a look at some of the messages that were coming into the phone, and one message that came in was from the Nigerian Air Force. And they're talking about how just yesterday, they took out this strike at Bita in Borno State. The way I had to write it down, he said it's one of the most decisive blows against Boko Haram in recent times. Fantastic. They said they killed scores, that's from the Nigerian Air Force, they said they killed scores of Boko Haram terrorists just yesterday. Which I think it's very, in the night, not even like yesterday, it was just at night. But you see, what's happened is we hear the military, and these days we've started hearing the military talk about it, and that's something I think the president should be thinking about in this his second year in office. The fact that, okay, we're doing our part, the kinetic bit, but there's a non-kinetic bit, which is also infused with a bit of politicizing, a little bit of corruption, sprinkled with a little bit of rubbish on top of it, you know? So while they're doing their part, how can the president, because the military is doing its part, we can see that from these messages. Right. How can the president get the other side of it, the non-kinetic, alleviating poverty and removing the politicization of these insecurity situations, and then of course the corruption, because there is an economy, we have heard, around this criminal behavior. Yeah.
So I mean, Kela, the conclusion of the matter is that the president needs to be more decisive you know, because it takes a bit of courage, you know, to go after those problems. You know, the question around the corruption, the question around collusion, you know, the question around even, you know, poverty alleviation, you know, because the insecurity feeds on the poverty and the poverty feeds on the insecurity. You know, they have a relationship that we need to break. That is why whatever it is that government is doing in terms of the economic situation, which, you know, most of the economists say that this is the right path, we cannot wait for those policies to germinate for us to begin to address the real severity of the suffering of the majority of Nigerians. And that's why it's important to do something in the area of poverty alleviation and show us what it is you are doing, well, you know, just so we know. We
have to wrap it up there, Mr. Laolu Akande, but I want to thank you very much for your insights this morning.
Thank you.
And all the best with Inside Sources.
All right, thank you so much.
Mr. Laolu Akande, former presidential aide and host of Inside Sources, joining us this morning for a very important conversation. All right, the conversation continues. And of course, we have someone joining us who's going to be breaking down quite a number of issues, so please stay with us.